what's going on everyone? Collected here, and let's try to return with what I hope to be just a fun topic. I try to do some topics like this, all the time on my channel, but this one, is basically going to be called, I haven't even thought of the title yet. It's going to be something like games I like in genres I don't. And what does that mean? Well, I've been gaming for such a long time, my whole life. I'm going to be 45 years old, this year.
Fuck, you're old.
And there's a lot of genres that I've always, dabbled in or just stuck with. But some of them have just never clicked, whether it's for personal reasons or I just don't like the style of game, the style of the topic, the style of the genre. And I picked out 4 genres / something else here, which I'll get into. I have played games in these areas that I really enjoy, but overall, whether it's in real life or just within the confines of gaming, they are not my go-to places to go when it comes to playing video games. So without wasting any more time, let me just get straight to the very first one. And like I said, I got 4, and I'll have a bunch of games to show you. But let's just go to the very first one, and let's see where we go from there. So, being from the UK, the UK is huge on football. Or for you Americans, you call it soccer, right? But, everyone else in the world calls it football. And growing up in the UK, football has always been a massive sport in the UK, whether it's local clubs, for, each part of the UK, each city, or just our general leagues. And, in, back in the day, I kind of got into football in high school. And, when I was younger, mostly because everyone else was playing football or talking about football or supporting the matches. Even back then, I never really loved it. But I just joined in just like everyone else. I used to support, when I was in high school, 16 years old, I used to support Newcastle United back in the days of Alan Shearer and Peter Beasley and Ginola and Shaka Hislop. If you know those football players, depending on what part of the world you're coming from. But, even back then, I still tried to get involved. But, as soon as I finished high school, I dropped out of all of it, really. I would still participate in terms of if my friends were watching a match and it was on a social occasion, I'd go there. But, now these days, I just don't care, about football. And I just never follow it anymore. But, amazingly, a lot of my friends still do. But in the realms of video games, football games were huge back in the day, absolutely huge, and there were so many types of football games that you could play compared to today, where there's hardly any. But back in the day, there were loads, and back then most of them were more arcade in nature. And as you might know, I'm an arcade child. I love arcade games. So if you put an arcade spin or a bit more craziness into a genre, then I'm most likely gonna be more inclined to play it. Now, I could name a lot of football games. One of the earlier ones, but one that comes to mind is Super Soccer on the SNES, right? Super Soccer on the SNES was my jam. Absolutely loved this game. Got this really early in my SNES's life back in the day. This isn't my original copy. I picked this up at like a games market a little while back. But, it's just great to actually have it again on my shelf, and I have played it. Just a little bit, but Super Soccer was just absolutely awesome. That really got me into football games. Another game with one of the best intros in video game history, people. One of the best theme songs, should I say, in video game history.
World Cup. World Cup.
World Cup Striker. Now, me and my close friend from back in the day, me and him, we played the SNES and the Mega Drive just all day, every day. Co-op games or whatever we were playing. And World Cup Striker was one of those games. I'm going to refer to him as Big Perm, which is
What's up, Big Perm? I mean, Big Worm?
his nickname. Without giving his real name away on here, but Big Perm and me played World Cup Striker to hell, and we knew all the cheats in this game, exactly where you could kick the ball from the precise point of the halfway line. You could lob the keeper from the halfway line if you kick the ball in the right spot, and you would score guaranteed every single time. And we had to ban ourselves from doing it. And also, if you took a corner, kick the ball from a corner from a certain point as well, you're guaranteed to header that ball in and score every single time. But yeah, World Cup Striker, absolutely love it. And World Cup Striker is fast-paced as well. It's what I preferred in football games, fast-paced football games. Moving along to the Saturn era, my very first Sega Saturn football game was International Victory Goal. And you go back to this game now, and it's not amazing, but I actually played this more single player by myself. And I played the absolute living hell out of it. I used to love when you scored to do like this capture thing. They go up to the TV screen like at the back of the stadium and they say something stupid like, "Get goal!" Get goal! With like some, funny, writing and stuff on the screen or whatever. But yeah, International Victory Goal, one of my earlier Saturn football games, played the absolute hell out of it. And then to follow up on the Saturn, you had other Sega games like Worldwide Soccer 97 and 98. I don't actually own 97 anymore for some reason, which I actually think I played more of 97 than I did of 98. But 98 I paid the last crap ton as well. And this was probably as serious a football game as you could get at a time in terms of visuals and mechanics and stuff. But I don't know, it still just had that element of gameplay that I seem to enjoy, but once we started hitting, these eras of football and stuff, I started floating off. But come to the PlayStation 2 generation, and when I was working in the video game store, my friends would always play the Pro Evolution Soccer series. And even though I never bought Pro Evolution Soccer myself, Pro Evo 2 and 3, my friends played the absolute crap out of, and I would join them in the shop. Which we had a PlayStation 2 kiosk, and we would play International Pro Evolution Soccer 2 and 3 on the kiosk there and play matches against each other. And like I said, I never bought it myself because by that time I was pretty much done with football games, outside of like the Mario sports games and stuff. But in terms of probably more serious football games, that was the end for me. And one more game, I thought of, and not last minute, but I just wanted to include. I'd actually own a physical version of it because they never released physical, I don't believe, but it might have done actually on the Neo Geo, but I don't know. But it was a Neo Geo game. It was called Soccer Brawl, and Soccer Brawl was just mental. I remember distinctively where I played that game in the arcades. I say in the arcades. In my town, you had this alleyway. And it's full of fish and chip shops. And back in the day, there were arcade machines everywhere. No matter what most shops you went into, there might be like this lone arcade machine just in the corner or something. And in one of the chip shops, they had Soccer Brawl. And Soccer Brawl is like a futuristic, crazy, like almost like robot football game where the actual characters themselves can kick the ball super hard, or they have like a special move and the ball would like spin around like that and then fly into the goal. And when the keeper like grabbed the ball or caught the ball would be so powerful it'd like push him back and it'd be like sparks on the floor for when he's been like pushed back by the momentum of the and the power of the ball. But yeah, Soccer Brawl I absolutely loved, to the point where I bought it on Arcade Archives on the Switch. Which is the footage I'll show you now. But yeah, in terms of a genre, I don't like football. I don't hate it, but I don't like it.
Foosball.
I'm not really watching it or anything like that. But there were times in the past where I would play football games, and very specific ones, and I absolutely loved them. Still to this day. And as I mentioned, for the Americans, you call football something else. You know, we call it American football. Whether you call it American football, I don't know. You just call it football. But I'll include Mutant League Football on the Sega Mega Drive. Still to this day, my favorite American football game. Absolutely loved it. I used to go. I can't remember the name of them. The team. But anyway, they were like these almost like lizard creatures, and they would roll down the pitch, almost like the movie Critters. If anyone remembers Critters from my era. Or like even back then, there were so many influences. I used to think that they looked like Blanca from Street Fighter 2. But yeah, you'd roll the ball. You know, they would roll down. And in Mutant League Football, if you tackle someone hard enough, you could basically kill them. And their body parts would explode and stuff like that. You could take out players, which was like a strategic thing. Or even if if the referee pissed you off, you could kill the referee, and then a substitute referee would come on. But yeah, Mutant League Football. I don't like American football games either. But if I was going to pick one that I've played in my past and I would still play to this day, I would jump back on Mutant League Football. And for the next one, sticking in the sports genre world, back in the day, if someone said to me, do you want to play golf? I couldn't think of anything more worse, or boring of a sport. Golf is a very, specific, mindset for the group of people who like to play that sport. I don't knock the skill of hitting a tiny ball, hundreds of yards and managing to pot it into a tiny hole. I think that's absolutely incredible. But for me to sit there and watch golf, oh my God, I could imagine anything worse. And when it comes to the genre of video games, you won't find me playing a single realistic, golf game. Remember when Tiger Woods blew up on when it came out of the Wii, even though the Tiger Woods games before, it really seemed to kick off with the Wii motion controls. And, I would have mentioned Wii Sports Golf in here, and it's what I did play, but my heart belongs to Camelot Software when it comes to golf games. And of course, Mario Golf, right? And you got NES Open on the original NES as well, and there were plenty of golf games, back in the early computer days that I would play. But Mario Golf, I know the rules of golf because of Mario Golf. And I think the first one I ever owned personally myself was Golf on the Game Boy. And put Mario in something, and most likely I'll be there. So I've played the Mario Golf series for most of my gaming life. My personal favorite one being Mario Golf on the N64. This game is just so chill and so relaxing. The music, I think they absolutely nailed. It's just the most relaxing Mario Golf sports game in the whole series, in my opinion. The closest one after that is Mario Golf Toadstool Tour on the GameCube, which, if I was going to say overall which is the best Mario Golf game, for me it's this one. Just the courses, the characters, the graphics, just everything is just Toadstool Tour is freaking awesome. And then at the same time, we'd be playing Mario Golf on the Game Boy Advance, and this one had the RPG modes, which we were beginning to love from Camelot Software. It's what I've been asking for in the later Mario Golf games, which they never ever really replicated. I love the sprites on this. If you know Camelot Software from the Shining Force, the Shining series days, and also from the Golden Sun games, you'll recognize the sprite work and the sounds of the speech bubbles and the characters instantly from Mario Golf on the Game Boy Advance. And then the last one I actually bought, because I haven't bought Mario Golf on the Switch yet, because it just looked too frantic. Which sounds a bit silly, because like I said, I love arcade stuff, but just with the Mario Golf series, I do prefer the more relaxed atmosphere, of it. But the last one I bought was World Tour on the 3DS, which out of all these I probably put the less time into, but it was still a decent golf game. But yeah, the Mario Golf series I absolutely love. When I actually hate the world of golf itself, I say hate, I just dislike the world of golf itself. And to follow up, we have Everybody's Golf and We Love Golf from Camelot Software. And these games I bought, I bought this back on on the, make sure I'm over here, back on the PS1, and did I have the sequel? I don't think I got the sequel anymore. No, I just got the first one. Great game. Not as good as the Mario Golf series in my opinion, but the best golf game on the PS1. not like I played every golf game, but the one I did play, Everybody's Golf on the PS1. And We Love Golf. We never got Mario Golf on the Wii, so this was the next best thing. Once again, didn't put a ton of hours into this, but I still, what I played of it, I did enjoy it, along with Wii Sports as well. So yeah, golf games. Not a huge fan of the sport. In fact, I'm not a fan of the sport. But when it comes to particular golf games, Mario Golf, baby. Mario Golf. Especially Mario Golf 64. Play Mario Golf on the N64. Perfection. And Toadstool Soul. Toadstool Soul. Play that too.
Nice birdie.
Yes!
And for the next genre, now we enter the realms of simulations. More like like real, what they attempt to do, real life simulations in video games. And for this next genre, more specifically for me, military shooters. I have never had any urging or desire to play a realistic, like, military shooter. For me, once again, I can't find anything else more boring. It's not my favorite type of movie. You won't ever catch me reading a book about them, and you will very rarely catch me playing a video game, military, realistic shooter. But of course, like I said, I've played games for a long time, and I do have some. And I will say, all these ones are probably, apart from one game here, all of them I have only bought purely because a group of my friends across consoles or PC were playing them at the same time and begged me just to jump on just for multiplayer. And actually I got two which I actually bought myself. I'll start with those two first. I'll start with those two first. So, in terms of a military shooter, the first one I got here is Black Hawk Down on the PC. Now, I still can't give you a full reason why I bought this game. I have seen the film as well. I didn't love the film that they done off this. But I think at the time, I think I was just testing out my new PC. And I thought, what better way than to try to push a new PC than with a somewhat realistic military shooter. And I'd never completed this, but I did actually play the first few levels quite a bit. And I'm not going to say I loved it, but I enjoyed it enough to continue so far, but of course eventually stopped. But yeah, Black Hawk Down, not a bad shooter. I still own it for reasons unknown. I'll probably never go back to it, but I did play it back in the day. Probably the next one is Black on the PS2.
Is that some sort of racial implication on myself and on my being? Black? I step into your store to actually get some kind of relief, and all I'm getting is racial grief.
Now, I did originally play this on the original Xbox back in the day, but I picked this copy up in a games market a little while back. I should have just got the original Xbox version again, but I don't know. I think this was just cheap at the games market, and I did enjoy Black, for what it was, but mostly because of its destructible, environments, which were a real, a build on like the Red Faction series and stuff, which is funny because it's EA as well. But yeah, Black is, it's definitely got a lot more, action to it, but it's still quite a, somewhat realistic military shooter. But yeah, Black is actually worth a play if you haven't played it. And now the next ones are all games I played purely for multiplayer with a group of friends. I would never have bought these by myself. So the first two, Rainbow Six 3 on the original Xbox. The times that I did actually pay for Xbox Live when it first came out, I was working in game shops as well, so a bunch of my friends, we were on Xbox Live for various games. I joined them on this. I remember, just cracking up. And the other one I got then is on the PS3 is Rainbow Six Vegas 2, which I played with another group of friends. Now, like I said, I would never have picked these up myself, and my memories of these games are just purely multiplayer. And you're seeing characters, basically you could basically tilt your character, like this in the game. I see someone coming towards you like that. It was the most terrifying thing in the world. But in some ways I kind of made my own fun, with the multiplayer, just to keep myself engaged, because otherwise I'd be bored out of hell. But yeah, I have played some Rainbow Six games. Still own them. Also, I have played Battlefield games. Both Battlefield 2 and 3, PC and PS3. Got the PS3 version of Battlefield 3 it's not a great version. Runs absolutely terribly. But at the same time, like I said, I was playing multiplayer with friends. My friend got me to buy a PS3, and he dragged me in on a number of games, and one of them was Battlefield 3. But I've also picked a Battlefield 2 on the PC, as you can see, and I have played the Battlefield games. But once again, outside of playing with specific friends, multiplayer, I just find it boring. I could never play them, by myself, or just with randos, or walk into a shop and say, hey, I fancy playing a Battlefield game. Not gonna happen. And then lastly, same friend who got me to pick up Battlefield 3, got me to pick up MAG. Now MAG, when you actually had a full, 126 people in a map, it was one of the most mental things I'd ever seen. Almost like another game called PlanetSide. Was it on the PC? I used to play back in the day as well. Massive battles, loads of players, loads of vehicles. So the actual carnage of it all, and trying to progress as a swarm of players, across a map, there was something about that, and I did enjoy it. But like I said, if I wasn't with my friends, I would never have picked this up, ever. There's absolutely no doubt about it. I would never have picked it up. But I do have good memories of playing MAG. Oh, crap! Dash it to the side, piece of trash. But yeah, I would never have picked it up myself. But MAG, I do have fond memories of. But yeah, mostly first person, military shooters. Tried to go for some realism. I couldn't care less. I don't think I will ever, pick one up, myself, out of the desire to play one. So yeah, definitely one genre I just, barely go into. And lastly, sticking with the simulation theme again. This one's, slightly mixed, but like I said, I'm not a huge fan of realistic, simulation type games, but I have played them. Now, some people might about this series. Let me just put those there. But the Metropolis Street Racer series, which obviously, the spiritual successor was Project Gotham. I feel some people call this an arcade style racer, with arcade elements. I don't see it. I really don't. The cars control quite, realistically, even though you could do decent power slides. They do control, I feel, quite realistically, and of course the environments were pushing for the replication, of certain cities around the world, London, Tokyo, and stuff like that. More than anything else. But MSR, Metropolis Street Racer on the Dreamcast, is, in my opinion, probably the best racer on the Dreamcast overall, and I did play the absolute living crap out of MSR, going through all the modes and stuff. You got, been going for a long time trying to get your kudos by power sliding around, and of course the music. You got vocals from TJ Davis. Done the vocals to like Sonic R and stuff. Of course I'm there. But yeah, MSR was an absolute, a showpiece for the Dreamcast, and yeah, absolutely love MSR. And I didn't put as much time into, but Project Gotham Racing as well. I feel like these games, like I said, try to go for a bit more realism over anything else. And Project Gotham, I did enjoy, for the most part on the original Xbox. But yeah, and then other races. Another one on Dreamcast, F355 Challenge by Yu Suzuki. When I first saw this, like the sunsets going around the racing arenas and stuff, one of the most beautiful color palettes I've seen in the game. At that time, just the sky was just absolutely gorgeous. But when it came to the actual racing, man, this was a tough game to play, and I don't think I ever put enough time into it to really master the controls of the Ferrari itself. This was not Outrun, that's for damn sure. This was not Outrun, but Ferrari F355 Challenge on a Dreamcast. Put some time into it. I have put a little bit of time. I wouldn't say no time, otherwise I wouldn't be talking about it, but put some time into it, and there is a mechanical beauty to it. But for me, definitely the graphics and the color palette, and it being a Sega game, is what kept me there the longest. And I'll mention Gran Turismo. I got this here, right? So Gran Turismo, when it first came out on the PS1, I was working in Electronics Boutique when that game launched, and I helped sell that game. I say I helped sell it. I didn't really push it myself. I was trying to push other racing games, especially like still Sega Rally and other N64 racing games. But I did buy the original Gran Turismo when it first came out, and I hated it. I was like, where's the fun in buying a slow ass car, trying to get a license, and doing this over and over until you eventually get a faster car, which still controls in my mind like ass. It's just pushing on realism. In video games, I just don't get it. Gran Turismo 5, I still got my copy of because my one friend who got me to buy the PlayStation 3, that was another multiplayer game. Never turned it on by myself at home. The only time I would play it is when we arranged a multiplayer session. And I love racing games, but like I said, I'm more of a fun arcade racer than definitely not a simulation racer. So I just can't be bothered with the slow, tedious nature. And you gotta love the cars as well. I don't love real world cars. I used to when I was a kid. Used to have Top Trump cars and stuff like that. But even they, with Top Trump cars, are like concept futuristic cars. I was like, man, that looks cool. Because we were coming out of the age of like Akira and stuff like that. Akira's bikes. But just seeing that futuristic take on supercars, I suppose. But yeah, I have dabbled with the Gran Turismo series, but you'll never see me purposefully buy one myself.
What do you do when you've done it all?
But yeah, those were some games I like in genres I don't. I could probably pull out a few more, but I feel like I actually put I put a lot of time like into Mario Golf and some of the racing games and stuff like that, and then multiplayer wise the ones I've mentioned like the FPS military shooters, but other games I could mention, but they just weren't quite there as much as these ones I have a connection to. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on some of the games I've mentioned. Of course, let me know some games you like in genres you necessarily don't like, and I'll reply to every single one of you people in the comments like I always strive to do. As always, thanks for listening, take care all, and stay beautiful.
Favorites too should be a real treat, so keep on listening. Now those veterans of the blues, the Jake Richards Band, with a great live version of When She Comes Back.